Hello, this is Carolyn Elliott, and you are listening to the Alchemical Journey. So today, what I wanted to do is tell you a little story about the kind of really awesome, fun things that an alchemical journal practice can bring into your life if you dedicate yourself to it. So this is a story of how I received some really surprising teachings that are very important to me, and I wouldn't have received this without the alchemical journal practice. All right, so here we go. So earlier, this is about 2 weeks ago now, when the sun had just moved into Leo, for my tarot card of the day, I pulled the Prince of Wands. And I made a note of that. And of course, I made a note of the astrology of the day. And the astrology of the day was, I believe it was Sun in Leo and Moon in Leo. It was sort of a new moon. Well, it was a new moon. Sun in Leo, Moon in Leo. And I thought, oh, how interesting, the Prince of Wands, because the Prince of Wands, as the Thoth deck will tell you, has an association with the first decan of Leo, so the first 10 degrees of Leo, which we had just moved into. And it is fairly rare for me to pull a card that has the same astrological associations that the actual time does. So, for example, the other day I pulled the Eight of Discs, which is associated with Mercury in Virgo. And is Mercury in Virgo right now? No, but I pulled the Eight of Discs. Okay, so anyways, I thought it was interesting. I pulled the Prince of Wands, first decan of Leo, and astrologically, we were in the first decan of Leo. So I made a note of that. And I couldn't remember my dreams from that past night, so I just wrote, I can't yet remember my dreams. And then I decided on my little teeny tiny next actions for the day, and I went on with my day. Then, around the evening time, Taya and I often watch a show together while we eat our dinner. So we were watching Strange Angel, which is a wonderful show all about the glories of sex magic and Jack Parsons, and highly recommend. It's available on Amazon Prime. Check it out. And we were watching an episode where Jack Parsons, who of course invented the rocket fuel that took humanity to the moon, and who did this through a very interesting series of psychedelic and sex magic operations, in addition to lots of long study and experimentation, was having dialogues with Aleister Crowley, his mentor. And what was interesting about this episode, well, one thing that was interesting was in the middle of it, Taya, my husband, he paused the show and he turned to me and he wanted to tell me about a realization he had about the importance of fire in magic. So this was in connection to this thing in the show where Jack Parsons appears to one of his friends. His friend is on a deep spiritual journey and praying to meet his elemental angel. And Jack Parsons appears to his friend and he uses this jet pack, this actual pack of rocket fuel that he can wear on his back, to kind of trick his friend into thinking that he's seen his fiery angel. So on one level it's a trick, because maybe his friend was, waiting for an ethereal kind of vision, and what he actually saw was Jack Parsons with actual flames from rocket fuel on his back looking like wings. But Taya said, on another level, his friend really did see the angel of fire, because Jack Parsons, through so much work and meditation on the mysteries of fire, the chemistry of fire, of rocket fuel, of, sexual desire, had actually succeeded in aligning himself with the elemental angel of fire to the point that he could incarnate that mystery. And if you think about it, like having access to jetpacks that can make it look like you have giant wings of fire, that in itself is a pretty big magical accomplishment that you only get if you're a rocket scientist who is indeed an alchemist of fire. So we were talking about this, and then we were talking about how fire is used in Palomayombe. So Palomayombe is a form of ancestor worship, necromantic magic from the Congo, which Taya happens to be initiated into. And Taya was talking about how Palomayombe sorcerers, who can have very dramatic effects with their magical workings, like they're reputed to be able to kill people magically, which that's a pretty intense thing. They use gunpowder in their spells. So they'll throw gunpowder into their ritual fires while they're doing incantations and make that explosive, fiery force part of the magical resonance that they are sending out into the world. And we were talking about how, in regular sort of ceremonial magic and folk magic, we use candles for this. We just light a candle to represent the fiery force in our spells. But how, gunpowder and rocket fuel are kind of cooler. So we were thinking about all of this and talking about it, and he was talking about how when I was in the Amazon a while back, I was in the Amazon in Peru on an ayahuasca retreat, and Taya was at home alone. I was gone for a few weeks. Taya was doing a Palomayombe ceremony, and I guess the lighter that he was using suddenly broke, and lighter fluid gushed out and into the ritual fire and caused this big plume of flame that was really scary and shook him into a deep state where he started having all of these recollections of a past life involving me. And what was also interesting was around this time in Peru, there was a lightning storm at the ayahuasca center where I was staying, and they didn't have a lightning rod, but they had a metal roof. So the lightning storm struck the roof, and I was sitting sort of on the floor of my little cabana dormitory thing, and the lightning went through the electrical system into the light switch on my wall. It jumped into a plastic broom handle that was leaning against the light switch. It went down into the floor and shocked me where I was sitting there on the floor. So I sort of was struck by lightning at a indirect remove, I guess, because it had the chance to ground in the earth, luckily. So it didn't really hurt me. It was sort of like the worst electric static shock ever. It hurt for about a minute, and then I was fine. So that happened, and that was obviously a pretty fiery, intense, explosive thing. So that happened around the same time that Taya had this experience of an explosion in a ritual that he was doing that brought him all these past life memories. So what was interesting is I remembered Taya telling me all about these memories that came to him. So, when I came back from Peru and we had a chance to talk, he told me about this, and I remembered that. But I did not remember, as we were sitting there in front of the TV watching Strange Angel, I did not remember this whole bit about the lighter fluid that leapt out and the giant plume of flame that kind of shocked him and scared him into a different state of consciousness where he suddenly accessed these recollections. I did not remember that bit at all. Okay, so that happened, and then later on in the episode of Strange Angel, as we're watching it, and I'm continuing to reflect on like the magical importance of literal fire in spells and whatnot, Jack Parsons figures out that he has not actually been seeing the real person, Aleister Crowley, in physical form. He's been seeing an astral projection of Aleister Crowley, because the real Aleister Crowley is, laying somewhere, addicted to heroin, dying of asthma, as he was. But he was astrally projecting himself to have conversations with Jack, and Jack thought he was conversing with the physical appearance of Crowley, and he found out he wasn't. And I thought that this was an interesting choice for the story. Like the story of Strange Angel, they do some fictionalizations, and they also do a lot of biographical stuff connected to Jack Parsons, and sometimes without being a total Jack Parsons expert, it's hard to parse out which is which. But I thought that this was a very interesting choice for the story, because Crowley was famously really great at astral projection. That was sort of what initially got him the favor of leaders in the Golden Dawn, was that he demonstrated this really kind of natural talent for it. So thinking about all of this and thinking about, so then later I go and I look up this stuff because I want to revisit what Aleister Crowley has to say about astral projection. And then I remember something that I completely forgot, which he calls it the body of light. And the body of light, he talks about a technique called the body of light. So the body of light involves projecting imaginatively at first, and then gradually it gains more and more substance, a simulacrum of oneself. And then imaginatively at first, and then gradually it gains more and more reality, endowing that simulacrum with your senses, your sight, your hearing, etc. And then traveling the astral planes, or the imaginal realms, or the unconscious, whatever you want to call it. Create this simulacrum called the body of light, endow it with your senses, and then you send it traveling. And there's other techniques connected to that, but I just thought that was so interesting, the body of light, and you're just talking about it as sort of this like very fiery thing. Anyways, so that happened, and so I made a note of that, and I started, it felt like it was a communication to me that I needed to begin working more seriously with astral magic, which previously I have not done. I've been pretty darn focused on results magic, success magic in my life, which I'm happy about. I've taught a lot of other people how to do it. I've created a 7-figure business, love and creativity and wealth and happiness and all that good stuff. I feel like no magician should be without. But it means that I have not spent as much time doing, what's known as like visionary magic or liminal magic, where you're going and you're exploring non-physical realms. So anyways, I'm feeling called to do that more, and I'm realizing the relevance of it to my current efforts. And there's something in my neighborhood making a weird sound, so I will be back and tell you more in the next segment. 1 minute. Hi there. Okay, so left off in the last segment because there was a weird sound happening. Now it's a few days later that I'm recording this. So to catch us up with the story, I was realizing it's important for me to start doing astral practices. So I did. I started doing creating the body of light and sending it out, rising on the planes, opening doors with tarot cards on them, and going around and exploring in a specific way, which I can talk about more later. So about 2 days after I started doing this, I had a dream, a very intense dream, that after some interpretation, I realized it was a dream about union with my holy guardian angel. First, I thought it might just be a sex dream, but then I realized the level of numinosity of like love and sublimity in it, along with some other interpretive clues, pointed me to the fact that it was more about union with a larger, higher, vaster part of myself. And there were also some elements in the dream that rhymed with gin. So actually in the dream, my husband Taya was pouring me a big glass of gin. And we don't drink gin. And so I was thinking about it and I was like, oh, okay, well there's, the Arabian spirits known as genie, also, known as geniuses or genie in Latin. So this whole thing of genie, geniuses, also, of course, connects with the holy guardian angel, which is sometimes called the higher genius. And it connects with lore about sort of a different, specific race of beings that has special magical powers, but is in some way similar to humans. It also connects with the Goetic spirits, with the spirits of the Decans. There's all of this stuff swirling around the notion of jinn or genie. But one of the things connected to it is this notion that they have bodies of smokeless fire. And if you've seen the series American Gods or read the book, there's a character in there who's a jinn who mates with a human and has this body of smokeless fire. So I've seen it vividly depicted in film. And I was just thinking, wow, that's very interesting that my mind would not only give me a dream about union with my holy guardian angel, but that the dream would have this element of, fire, jinn, fiery spirit, when the practice that I was doing, the body of light, involved emanating a simulacrum of myself as this fiery golden form. And of course, the whole initial associations with the Prince of Wands and Jack Parsons as an angel of fire, creating the rocket fuel that took man to the moon. Okay, so that happened. Then a few days later, my husband and I and the baby went down south to a sundance where my friend Crystal was sundancing. We wanted to go see and support her. So we went down and we stayed at a bed and breakfast, and in the morning I got up and I pulled my tarot card. It was the Prince of Wands again, which makes sense. And interestingly, also still in the time of the first decan of Leo. And of course, Prince of Wands, very fiery, very solar. We're going to a sundance today. Okay, so we drive over to the sundance. And the dancers are on a break. They take rests periodically throughout the day. And I sit down with other people that I know who are also there to support Crystal. And one of these people is a young man that I've only ever interacted with at these sort of ceremonial contexts, really, like medicine ceremonies and things like that. But he lives in the same town as us, and we have some other mutual acquaintances with him. I started, chatting with him, asking him what was new, what was going on. And he was telling me, I've been doing a lot of Tai Chi lately, which involves, strengthening the astral body, and I've begun really focusing on astral travel. And I was like, oh, how fascinating. I've also just recently begun to focus on this. And we had a very deep conversation where he told me some things that he's been learning from his Tai Chi teacher concerning the elements connected with fire and the elements connected with water in the physical body and the astral body, and the connections, how to strengthen them so you can see more clearly in the astral realms. And I was just floored. So So we had to leave shortly after because we had to get back to the city. But, as we were driving home, I was just reflecting like, wow, how amazing is it that a week or so ago, I pulled the Prince of Wands. I had this whole download from watching Strange Angel, the Jack Parsons show, and this whole fascinating stuff coming to the surface of awareness about the power of fire in magic. And then I got inspired to start doing astral travel, and then I started doing it, and then my unconscious responded very strongly, very positively with this dream about union with my larger self that also had, a strong fire spirit element to it, Jinn, genie. And then I pull the Prince of Wands again, go to a Sundance, and speak to a person who has these insights and these connections, who's similarly been working on astral travel and is farther along with it than me, and had really deep, really beautiful things to share with me about it. It's just kind of wild. And I never would have made all of those connections, and I wouldn't have known to pay deep attention, and I wouldn't have even understood the messages that were coming to me unless I had a daily practice of pulling a tarot card, noticing where we are astrologically, what the astrological season is, what the astrological weather is, and recording my dreams, and interpreting and reflecting on the linkages and the rhymes and the interpretations of all of them. You see what I mean here? So something, I'm very inspired by this series of synchronicities, and it's giving me strength and energy to pursue my further magical studies. Strength and energy and direction that I would not have had if I had not been paying attention in this specific way to the connections of myself, with the unconscious via tarot cards, via astrology, via dreams. And of course, also my alchemical journal gives me the structure to, I can put practice astral travel in my habit grid. I can, focus on it and develop it, put into action what I've been learning and discovering, not just be like, oh, wow, that's crazy, how cool, but actually put it into action, put it into practice, continue to be transformed and developed by it, with the focus on action that's also built into the alchemical journal practice. So I hope that this little story has some inspiration in it for you. I hope it encourages you to think like, hey, wow, what kind of interesting series of synchronicities and messages and meetings, might be coming to me that I'm not even really grokking or really taking in because I haven't been doing this kind of practice of deep attention, deep dialogue with the unconscious, and, what might await me were I to do this. So, I'm sure that there is very much that awaits you. So I encourage you to begin experimenting with the practice of the Alchemical Journal. And of course, you can listen to my older little audio track where I lay it out. The Alchemical Journal is also a practice that all of the members in Wealth, the exclusive alchemical community where leaders come into their full power via the Hermetic arts that I run with my husband, Taya, we all do the Alchemical Journal practice in Wealth, and we, talk about our experiences with it, and we have workshops and practice sessions connected with topics like the tarot, the Kabbalah, dream interpretation, so on. So if you experiment with the practice of the Alchemical Journal, oh boy, and you find yourself really enjoying it, you might want to consider joining us in Wealth. Okay, thank you everybody. Bye-bye.